Perfect. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining another Flawless Inbound workshop. This workshop actually is going to be very different. This is going to be a panel conversation, and we have a very special guest with us today. Tom Kelly is the Director of Product Management and Marketing, Oracle NetSuite. I will let him do the introduction. But why we have Tom today? Big question. We are dealing with a lot of clients right now who are maybe struggling with their existing financial software or financial cloud platform, because it seems they're now scratching the surface and they're trying to grow beyond traditional financial cloud software to look into kind of a full enterprise software that can do a lot more than just accounting, and hopefully can do even a lot more in accounting. So we decided who's better than Tom that can come to speak to us about why migrate, what's the signs, how NetSuite can help, and what else should we be looking for. Please, for everybody who's on the call today, I'll be the moderator for the session. My name is Seher Gattas, founder and CEO of Flawless Inbound. We are a proud Oracle NetSuite solution partner in US and Canada. And I will make sure to capture all your questions and hand them over to Tom. Tom, we're excited. We're ready for you. Can you please do an introduction to the team today?
Certainly. Thanks, Seher. I appreciate everybody taking time out of your busy schedules and all. And as you see the title here, it says QuickBooks, it's time for a change, why companies switch from QuickBooks to NetSuite. Just to put it in perspective, there's a lot of switching going on. And frankly, a lot of our customers switch from a lot of products. So even though we're going to be focusing on some of the concepts relative to QuickBooks, I think what you will see, if you are using other types of packages out there, you're going to find some similarities. So as I go through this, I may be saying QuickBooks, but just be in mind that, or keep in mind that it really is it's going to be indicative of kind of, as Seher said, you're at a situation now where your company is trying to grow and it's being inhibited in some regards in terms of the technology you may have in place. So a little bit about myself, just to take a step back, I've felt your pain. In my previous jobs, I've been a CFO, CIO, controller, whatever, from large billion-dollar companies to small million-dollar companies and everything in between. I even had my own organization that I ran for about 10 years where we were CXO type services with a focus on the cloud. And so we were either brought into situations where clients wanted to get into the cloud and we'd help them do that, or they needed help with CXO services, kind of writing an organization, whatever. So it was an interesting dynamic, but what was at the crux of that in either case was the cloud technology and capability to, one thing to have a strategy, a whole other thing to carry that strategy off. Currently right now at Oracle NetSuite, my responsibilities focus on product marketing and product management, and a key focus on what we call our global financials. So the financial component of our NetSuite platform. But I also focus on what we have verticals, whether that's the software high-tech vertical, general business, which turns to be a catch-all where if a business doesn't fit somewhere, and also a focus on nonprofit. And another thing I tend to work on is what we call CPM, corporate performance management. So things like planning and budgeting, and we're going to be coming out with capabilities to do account reconciliation, period close management, as well as accounting hub and consolidations. So if that's not enough, and then in my spare time, I help out with NetSuite Analyst Relations. So that's me in a nutshell, but let's get to the meat of the matter and why we're here today. And Seher, as I said, as I go, I tend to get into it. Please interrupt me if you have an important question, and I will absolutely put on the brakes and we'll get to the important question, all right?
Thank you, sir. We'll do.
So we are a public company, and I must share our safe harbor statement. So the following is intended to outline, I've done this so many times, folks. Here's the deal, and I got this approved by Oracle Legal. Do not make any decisions to buy or sell Oracle stock based on what I say today. That is what safe harbor is all about, and there you have it. So the agenda today, I'm going to talk about three things: why companies switch from QuickBooks, what NetSuite can do for a company, and then challenges that you may have for developing organizations. So I'm a little bit of a Top Gun fan with Tom Cruise, and there's a wonderful scene in Top Gun, and I bring this up because Top Gun 2 is supposed to come out in 2020, and I think something happened in 2020 that we all have experienced, and so it's been delayed now, I think, until November of this year. But in the movie, Tom Cruise would say, "I feel the need for functionality. Hopefully Tom Cruise isn't watching and I'm not going to get sued, but he would say the need for speed. But the reason why I have functionality here is we actually did a study, we did a survey, and we wanted to find out, why are you switching from QuickBooks? And it was very interesting to 66% said the main reason they were switching was for functionality. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of things that go into that. And there are certain components of functionality. It may have been accounting-based, CRM-based, e-commerce-based, but the point is people need more functionality to run their business. And hence, this is the bandwidth that organizations tend to come up against as they're looking at, we're being inhibited by the technology that we currently have in place. We need to do something different. And so, as I said, we're going to talk about QuickBooks. It has many versions, and it even has an online version. But here's the thing. I think a lot of organizations, and I can speak from personal experience here, QuickBooks is a good package. It's great. It's easy to put in place and get up and running. But then certain things start to happen. You feel like, okay, well, I need to do something with inventory, and you buy a solution. You need to do something with customer support, you need to buy a solution. So what ends up happening is you have this conglomerate of information and packages, and you're trying to manage your business. And what really ends up starting to happen is you start to have this situation where you hit bandwidths, or you can't get the information you want, or you can't close your books quickly. So there's a whole gamut of information, some of which you probably are all experiencing to some degree at this point in time, and which is probably why you're on this webinar. So a little bit about NetSuite, and there's this wonderful build here you see. It's one product and one platform. And I can tell you from past experience, I can remember coming into meetings at small to mid-sized companies that I was either a consultant for, CFO for, whatever, and I would swear to you we'd spend probably 75% of the meeting arguing about whose information was right. I'm the CFO, here's my financial information, here's the person in charge of sales, here's my CRM information. It was amazing to me the unproductive nature of what would happen at these management meetings. The concept behind NetSuite is simple. It's one platform. So that means front to back office and everything in between. Whether you're a service company, you need project management, you're a product company, manufacturing company, that capability is based within NetSuite. Then there's other questions. Well, I'm a company that's multi-entity, so you have to be able to do consolidations. You also, maybe you're very specific to an industry. Certain industries have certain specific needs. So even though it's still one platform in NetSuite, you also have industry versions that can help you get up and running very quickly in your particular industry. And then in some cases, there's always like, I need to do some customization, or I need to integrate some applications. So the ability to do that through the Suite Cloud platform is available to pretty much anybody. And we have, I want to say, over 1,000 partners that all different types of functionality and capability that you may specifically need to run your organization. And just drilling down on the financial features. So there's a lot of capability in the financials, in our global cloud financials. Obviously from a finance and accounting standpoint, you would expect general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, fixed asset management, even lease accounting, things of that nature, financial planning. So the ability to do planning, budgeting, and analysis, provide that functionality, billing. And I don't just mean billing from an AR standpoint, but I mean subscription billing, annuity billing. There's a component that we offer that allows organizations to do that if that's what your business model requires. The financial reporting capabilities, this was something that, back in the day when I first started using NetSuite, and I'm not going to let you know, but I'm sure you can tell, given my perspective here and my look, that it was only just a few years ago. No, it was quite a while ago, frankly. And what really drove me to it, not only just the single platform, but being able to get information out of the system, either having the system literally show it to me, by pressing a button, or I needed to do some type of custom reporting and I wanted to download it into Excel. The ability to do it in NetSuite was literally a press of a button. And obviously over time, it's gotten better and better. And I'll talk about that here in a little bit. But there's other things about NetSuite you should know about. So for those of you who have to follow the revenue recognition requirements from whether it's ASC, whether it's the IFRS, whatever accounting body you need to adhere to, or maybe you have to adhere to both. Think about being able to take revenue recognition and make it as easy as depreciating a fixed asset. And I'm not trying to market to you guys. It's very simply this. when you have to do revenue recognition, you have to come up with a scenario and a recipe, if you will, depending upon the contract and how you're going to recognize revenue. Once you've set that up, when you send information or certain milestones are hit, the information is automatically recorded. It's technically mechanized in the background. And then somebody said to me, well, what if things change? And I said, that's great, because what happens when fixed assets changes and you do a leasehold improvement? What do? You go into the system, you add the leasehold improvement, you re-snap the chalk line, and the system automatically depreciates. Same thing is true of revenue recognition in NetSuite. So there's a lot of examples of that. And if some of your questions, approach this or other needs, I'm absolutely going to be happy to talk about that. And then finally, consolidation, but not just consolidation. Let's say if you're in one country, but what if you're global? So it's consolidation, not just in one currency, but pretty much just about any currency you can tend to operate in. So the point I'm trying to make here is the features are rich. The functionality that people are clamoring for is inherent within the product, in the core product. So no bolt-ons, no additions, etc.
Tom, this is a great point, actually, what you mentioned, especially in the previous slide, because a lot of the attendants or people who are going to hear this recording either are Canadian companies who have US subsidy, or are US companies who are expanding in Canada and actually going international. And what exactly I heard from you, especially in the Rev Rec side of things, which is a gigantic thing right now for CFOs or financial managers, is how can I actually manage different kind of tax structures? So you mentioned GAAP, IC, IFRS, and I think this is one of the beauties actually that NetSuite have that, please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think other maybe financial platforms can easily do, that they can manage different kind of, different books of business with different kind of tax regimes in a single kind of dashboard. And I think I've seen it before. NetSuite can seamlessly do that if designed and configured properly. Is that correct, Tom?
That is correct. And to just go a little bit further on that is, so multi-entity from a standpoint, and you're in, different countries, you can set up subsidiaries, right? That when you look at the subsidiary, the operating subsidiary, you can see it, let's say in Canadian dollars, but let's say the parent is sitting in the US. You can then also look at a consolidated business, which takes the Canadian information, the US information, and does the FX exchange, and you can look at the business that way. But the other thing I want to point out is we have what we would call localization. So let's just say you're operating in China and you need to be compliant with what's called, believe it or not, they have a thing called the golden tax rule. And there is a lot, it sounds fun and everything, but trust me, it's not. It's very intense and involved. But the point is we have capability built into a localization for China so that if you're operating in that country from a statutory standpoint, whether it's taxes, governmental reporting, you can be compliant as a result of using the system. So that's a very important point to make. So it is global and it goes beyond tax, depending upon what the needs of several major countries are.
So Tom, I have two follow-up questions on that, because we heard this millions of times for clients that we're working with. Can NetSuite do that? So the two follow-up question is, I would assume you guys in reporting, when we're running report now, I can run a global report of the whole organization globally, and I can run specific reports per region or per subsidy, and then the report itself will adjust it how I look at things to kind of show me, currency, intercompany exchange rates, things like that, and also from a taxation. Is that correct?
That is correct. So, it depends, and you need to tell the system how you want to look at it. So if you're in a certain subsidiary in Brazil, as a matter, you want to make sure that you're looking at in, the Brazilian-based business scenarios, whether that's currency, how you record certain information. So yes, absolutely. And then if you're sitting at, corporate, and maybe you want to look at Brazil separately, great. You can look at it in Brazilian currency or US or whatever you want to do, and then even on a consolidated basis, you can consolidate everything into the the company's main headquarters currency.
Thank you.
Sure. And so the next page, just this is a way to just let you know, and this isn't really everything, but the idea behind NetSuite is to give you real-time compliance and insight across multiple entities and countries. So we are used in 212 countries / territories. We added over 14 countries in the last year. We have over 100 currencies that we support for taxes and reporting for countries we support. Accounting hub capability. So we have some organizations that, you just maybe want to consolidate an entity, and it might be at the journal entry level, or maybe you want a little bit more detail. You want to capture some transactions. The point is, we can allow you to do it at any level. It could be a journal entry, income statement level, or it could be down to a transaction level. We support over 27 languages. We have 190 plus currencies that are updated daily, or frankly, as many times as you want. And when we talked about the localizations compliance, so whether it's IFRS, GAAP, SOX, it also can be indicative of a particular country. We have over 90 bank payment formats we support. And the point I want to make about NetSuite, because it is cloud-based, it's always on. So it technically is open 24/7, 365, and it's going to be what you make of it. If you're a company that you need to have information given to you on a real-time basis, you can have stuff updating the system on a real-time basis, however you want to do it. So when you think about that, if we're all more on the accounting bent here, think about being able to close your books 24/7, 365. And I love when I say that, because when I do it live, there's usually several people in the audience that faint. We have to bring in the EMTs to revive folks, and I have to explain to them that it's not that bad. It's not like you're constantly closing the books every minute of every day, but the reality of a lot of the things that you're doing can lend itself to closing more on an automated basis.
Tom, I got another question here. So when you speak about closing the books and stuff like that, again, organizations who are attending today or will be listening to the recording, some of them will be dealing with Canadian banks, U.S. banks, international banks. So what's like how NetSuite kind of integrate with banks and kind of do kind of bank reconciliation, things like that?
Yeah. So we have a capability we call it the Bank Suite banking app. And what it does is you connect your bank accounts to NetSuite. So what's happening is, real time, the information's coming in. And then think about the bank reconciliation. So we've come up with this automation where, you may have to go through it a couple times. The system has machine learning inherent within it. An example I usually give, I think most of us have experienced this, is we bring bank information in and some of the stuff matches. And then there's always the ubiquitous banking fees that for some reason don't know where to go. You map it, banking fees should go to this general ledger account. Guess what happens next time the system runs? It's going to say, oh, that's banking fees, goes to that general ledger account. So the point I'm making here is, even from a cash standpoint, with your bank connectivity, to some degree, if you're a small company, I would view it as it's like a digital checkbook. It's almost, I have a real-time cash position. And conversely, if you're a larger company, you can operate it almost like a cash desk. Am I short? I need to borrow in the market. Am I long? I need to invest in the market. So the ability to automate the feed of information, and more importantly, in my estimation as an accountant, the reconciliation or application of that information is pretty profound in terms of what we offer. And that's for one bank account to many you can do it with. And whether, North American based or other countries, we do it for both.
Thank you.
And so this is just, I thought I'd show you, this is what NetSuite looks like. This is what we call a dashboard. And so when Sahara is saying, hey, I want to look at a business, I want to look at a particular subsidiary, you can tell the system what you want to look at. So whether it's a particular subsidiary or several subsidiaries, it depends on how you want to set it up. But the point I want to make about this is NetSuite is what we would say is role-based. So what I would usually tell people is I would take the person who is in charge of accounts payable and I would say, you are the CEO of accounts payable. And the person would be like, well, what does that mean? Well, it simply means this. There are things that you need to know about on a day in and day out basis, the stuff that you're going to action against, the stuff you have control over. You can have that on the system in the dashboard. The other thing is you may need to look at other things. What's our cash balance, right? Because I don't want to pay more than the cash we have in the bank, or other stuff that the organization feels you should be privy to in order to fully execute your job, but have a well-rounded view of what's going on in the organization. But the other thing about this dashboard is anything you see on here, you can click and drill down. So across the top, we have balance sheet, trial balance. You can click on this and you're going to get your balance sheet. You can see your trial balance. You can see your budget versus actual. You have reminders here to the left. So the point I want to make is this is an example of a dashboard. It doesn't necessarily mean this has to be what it looks like. You may have other ways you want to configure it for your specific needs. But the point I want to make is, as I showed you before, it's on one platform. I have the ability to drill down on anything in the system all the way down to the transaction level, the initial input into the system, or anything from the top to the bottom. So that's the thing. And I don't want to say we're lazy, but to some degree, it's great to be able to sit at your desk and point and click, or not just sit at your desk, but you can run the application on pretty much any device, whether it's a smartphone, tablet, or laptop, Chromebook, desktop. Not sure what a desktop is these days, but anyway, I digress. But the point is, the UI is built in such a way that you can use it technically the way you work. So keep that in mind as you go forward. I can remember when I ran my own business, I would be paying, processing payments on my smartphone. And you might say, oh my God, well, there's security built into the system, because I'll tell you something else. Particularly in this day and age, when it comes to security, we have a whole host of people, and we are part of Oracle. So I can absolutely guarantee you that this is something we take seriously, and we focus on second by second, not minute by minute, not day by day, second by second. So it is extremely important that we make sure things are secure, regardless of how you're coming into the system.
And Tom, this is a great point you're making right now, because when we measure the total cost of ownership when moving to a cloud-based platform, some vendors, they still ask their client maybe to plan for IT, hosting, server, security. My understanding with the NetSuite platform, the pricing of the solution includes all of that. So when we're doing a comparison of the total cost of ownership, the NetSuite platform includes everything you mentioned: the security, the patching, the hosting, and kind of the scalability as well. So then as a business owner or as a CFO, I don't need to budget any of that, because that's already taken care of by NetSuite. The other thing, I have two questions for you. I can see you guys have the smart mobile app. I would assume NetSuite is an ERP solution. So then you guys have warehouse management component. Can I use my mobile app to do the pick, pack, and ship and things like this in warehouse without me buying an extra hardware to kind of scan a box in and box out and stuff like that?
Yes, but I would say two things. Number one, if you don't want to buy the hardware to be able to do scanning and all for warehouse management, yes, you can use a tablet or a smartphone to do that. Or if you're using scanners today and you don't want to have to buy new scanners, many times, I think for the majority of them, you can integrate them with the platform. So, it's an either or thing. Maybe you want to buy stuff, great. You've been using stuff, great. Or you don't have any stuff and everybody has smartphones. Well, we can pretty much support any situation with regards to that.
Beautiful. My second question is, you mentioned that NetSuite is a role-based. And I really love that. And each and every time we speak to our clients about that, they love that, because I can see we can create different roles, different templates and all those kind of things. Can I assume that if I joined, let's say, as a VP sales versus CFO, I would see completely different KPIs, and even my menu on the top will change completely depending on my need and my sales team need versus the CFO and his or her controller or her account payable, account receivable personnel? Is that a correct assumption?
Yeah, it is true. And I over on the right-hand side, if you're looking at the laptop desktop, you can see this as Peter Kruti, and he is considered an administrator, right? So that's the global, permission, if you will. But I can also have other, roles in a company, because, particularly in smaller companies, sometimes you may have to, God forbid, put AR and AP together, but you do. So you can customize the role to fit the situation for an organization. You can also, make sure you're doing that, as you say. You don't want salespeople maybe to have all of the access to the information that a financial person has, and vice versa. So there's abilities within the system to make sure the role is configured to you. And then even to that degree, if you have to customize the role because there's 5 people in the company, and in a perfect world, you could segregate duties, but in reality, that's not, what can happen. So we provide the ability for you to basically set it up for how you work. And then even beyond that, if you do have to switch roles, you have the ability to do that as well.
Thank you.
Okay. So I talked a little bit about, it's one platform, the reporting. So one of the things or initiatives we've had that we've been working on for several years now is we call it Suite Analytics. I'll just tell you, we're at NetSuite, so we put suite in front of anything, right? So suite this, suite that. So please bear with me. But Suite Analytics is basically, think BI. Think of the ability to, set up information that's going to probably be, from either a graphical standpoint or, in large degree, my experience, I'd like to run a report and I may need to download it into Excel and I'm going to put it in a pivot table. I'm going to do some analysis. Well, within Suite Analytics now, you can do that analysis right within NetSuite. So, for the most part, I think sometimes we want just a quick answer. We don't want to do, a long, drawn out analytic analysis. So the ability to just do that in NetSuite, I wonder if, and make some assumptions and think about it as like, the way I would describe it is it's almost like having a pivot table type functionality within NetSuite. And remember, everything in the platform, so you can pretty much pull anything in the platform to analyze and connect however you want to do it. So the Suite Analytics capability is a great feature, and we build these things that we call them workbooks. So there are several out there. We have a warehouse manager workbook. We have a controller's workbook. We have several, depending upon roles, workbooks that would be, really speak to you as an individual, because these are what, commonly and consistently you would do, let's say, as a controller across any business. So we have several, predefined dashboards and workbooks that are already out there for your use. So you don't have to start from scratch.
So Tom, I have two questions here. This is actually very exciting because working with a lot of organizations, always we hear that they need always to do BI analytics and things like that. And we always hear, okay, maybe we need to connect Microsoft BI or Tableau to kind of the platform. And I know NetSuite can integrate with those platforms too. But what I'm hearing from you right now is that if I have NetSuite have this capability native in the system, I didn't need maybe to pay for another piece of software and then figure out integration to be able to do this because this is native out of the box function in NetSuite.
Absolutely correct. And so I would say most companies, I would encourage you to, and this is probably not my marketing friends would, they're going to cringe at this word I'm going to say, but I would argue that you struggle with it for a little bit. And I think what you're going to find is, it's probably 80-20. I don't want to say if, you really have to bring in data points from, the weather forecast, let's say, to the, the financial numbers, you probably do need another tool and have something offline. But if you just need to look at the financial numbers, you could do probably all of that within NetSuite. And you don't need something like a Tableau or another bolt-on, frankly, to put the information into and analyze it.
And I'll be honest with you, like as we're helping a lot of clients, I love what you guys did with the Suite Analytics workbook, because I think what you did is you're telling our clients, guys, you don't need to rebuild the ocean. The workbook is like a template that you can just start from. So you don't need to figure out what do I need analytics on, because you guys have done the work already from a NetSuite perspective. So I think that this is something else that we personally are very excited for as Flawless Inbound. We're kind of doing implementation for our clients using the NetSuite platform. Would I assume that you guys are kind of having like an AI function kind of at the back end of this analytics?
Yeah, so when we get to, artificial intelligence and machine learning, yes, we, it's a crawl, walk, run type thing, but we're actually putting that into the system where and when we can. The one example I give you about, bank reconciliation where, maybe that's kind of an easy out, but it is machine learning. If I'm telling the system, hey, this is bank service fees and it goes to this general ledger, the system has learned now. So the next time you run it, it's learned that. It's automatically going to take care of that. Those capabilities, or we're building them out pretty consistently across the platform, whether it's supply chain logistics or financials or CRM or e-commerce, you name it. We're absolutely doing that in a big way. The one thing I do just want to follow up on what you said is we have these workbooks, and you're right, you don't need to boil the ocean or start from scratch or recreate or create something. But the other thing I want to point out is maybe the controller's workbook that we put together is great for about 60% of what I do. But you know what? There's 40% of stuff that I'd like to do myself. Guess what? You can actually, configure the workbook. So you don't have to use the workbook as is. You can configure it to fit your needs. But I think, it's a great way to get up and running and not have to sit back and figure out, okay, what am I going to pull all together here? It's actually pre-programmed for you to take advantage of.
Thank you.
Sure. And so another thing that can give you a little bit of angst, I think, is, okay, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to implement an ERP, which that is what NetSuite is. And so you've heard many horror stories, right? Companies go bankrupt in some cases, in the worst case. And in other cases, you implement a system, you go live, and you have less data than you had before. Well, we've been implementing NetSuite thousands of times over the last 20 years. And what I can tell you is we have very well thought through approaches to how you want to go about implementing the product. And we call this our NetSuite stairway. And this is for financial implementations. And you can see the terms there: it's establish, elevate, expand, accelerate, and dominate, right? And all the bullet points you see below there, this is functionality within the system. Now, what I don't want to impose or impart is that you have to follow this, right? So if you're a company and we come to you and say, okay, you can use us, you're only going to be able to implement financial CRM and analytics and dashboards, and that's it the first time. No, that's not the case. What are your requirements? So let's say you need project management. Let's say you need talent management. The point I want to make is this too is somewhat customizable to your current situation. But more importantly, there's a lot of different directions you can go in. I think we do a very good job of making sure you understand, here's the functionality, here's what's recommended. No, by the way, it also lends itself to the industry you might be in. So if you're a software company, there are certain components and directions and configurations we recommend versus you're a manufacturing company, and there's certain components and functionality. And also there's two things here. One is the functionality and one is the industry and your needs. And we basically configure it to that, but we're building off of 20 plus years and thousands of implementations experience to do so.
Tom, I just want to echo exactly what you're saying right now. We were working with a client, actually just presenting to them yesterday. So they're a SaaS-based organization, and they were I think they're replacing their SAP. They have an old SAP system. It was like an on-premise, not cloud-based. And one of the things the CEO said, hey guys, okay, let's say I'm going to NetSuite, but I need this kind of project management tool that has nothing to do with financials. And in this project management tool, I have like an employee timesheet that I just need to figure out. So we actually exactly use this model, exactly, Tom, that you're presenting, and said, okay, you know what? How about we go with financial first, but then we'll enable a component of employee timesheet, which, by the way, it's included also in financial first. And then we go slowly with the need of your business. And I think this messaging kind of reduced the anxiety for a lot of the decision makers, that they can go step by step, they can test the system, they train their team, then they start enabling more departments as they go through. My question to you is, if I go one step and then I want to just change route, NetSuite will not lock me down, right? I can enable more in any direction I want to go. Is that correct?
That is correct. I just would say, look at the situation. If you're a small organization, maybe you don't have a lot of resources, and oh, by the way, you still need to run your business, right? Because you can't just say, oh, we're going to shut down and by the way, we've implemented it in 30 days or less, and usually we're talking about 30 to 90 days. But regardless, even one day, I'm not going to shut down for one day. You have to run your business. So the only caveat I'd throw in there is, yes, you can go in any direction you want, but I would be very careful about, don't try to bite off more than you can chew, and be very cognizant of what your responsibilities and in current situation is for your organization as you go about this. But yeah, if you want, you can implement all this stuff, and I've been in situations like that too, and we've done it. So I think it matters most, as I think the flavor you can see I'm talking about here is whether it's role-based and I want to report or a dashboard a certain way, or I want to implement the product, it can be configured to what your current needs are.
Beautiful. Thank you.
I just like to show this graphic because I think, obviously during the pandemic, this might be a reality for a lot of people, but and I can attest to this. I've been here before, where literally sitting in a room with my laptop and kind of trying to do my work while watching my children. You can imagine, that doesn't mean I'm a bad father, please, you can send all this stuff to Sahar, but I'm a good dad. I can have my sons come in here, they've grown up well. But the point I want to make is, in this day and age, I don't think you have to be sitting at your desk, and therefore if I'm at my desk, I'm working. I think we've all kind of realized the fact that, kind of when sometimes you're at your desk, you're really not working. But what this system will allow you to do is you can work where and whenever you want. And again, it depends upon your company. But what we have found is that people become much more productive, much more efficient, and they're able to get their jobs done, and they're able to connect to the system because all you need is an internet connection and a device to do certain tasks. And so the point I want to make is, hey, if you have kids and you put the kids to bed, then you may want to work for a couple hours, or you may want to be getting up at 3 a.m. and you're going to work from 3 to 9 and have everything done for the day. The point I'm making here is it's not just to say the system's configurable to you, but how you interact with the system is also configurable to, how you want to go about your day and what you're responsible for and what your activities you're going to perform. And I want to just give you a good book to read. I want to be careful about how I position this. It's not going to read like a bestseller, even though it kind of was, but it's a book called Growing Pains. And I've used this book most of my career, believe it or not. It's in its 5th edition, if you see there. But what the concept of the book is it's no different than you or I as a person, right? We're born, we're an infant, we're a toddler, we're an adolescent, we're an adult. And as you go through each of those transitions in life, there are certain things that come along with it, right? So you're learning how to crawl, you're learning how to walk. In the case of companies, whether I'm a startup, I'm a small to mid-sized business, I'm a larger, well-established enterprise, there are certain aspects of what's happening as you reach each one of these, growth stages, if you will. And what's happening is you have these pains that are associated with it. So, one of the things I can talk about with a startup is you may have all this phenomenal growth, yet you're not having any profit. What's going on? How do we, rectify this? A large part of a lot of the growing pains, and this is me saying this, I have found that NetSuite was a tool that I could use to mitigate some of the growing pains. I don't want to say it alleviates them, but it does a very good job of helping you, kind of find your way, if you will, through the growth of your organization, depending upon what stage you're at. So, no different than we showed with the stairway. Conceptually, this is what we're talking about with this book, but I encourage you to read it if you're in certain situations, because what you're going to find, and I would do this, is I'm reading this and I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly everything that we're dealing with right now. So it's a great book to kind of let you know, hey, you're not the first, and we've been there before, and oh, guess what? There are ways to, help you through this, if you will, so you can get to the next growth stage. And so this is a little tongue in cheek, but I think this might be why a lot of you are here right now, this poor camel, and there's the last straw. So I'm sure many of you might be on this call because, frankly, the last straw has broken the camel's back, and we need to do something, and we need to change it. And that last straw, I mean, it could be one of probably hundreds of things, but the point is, what I would tell you is, in large regard, trying to look at some of the capabilities and going back to the functionality piece, NetSuite can pretty much help you, and we can get your camel up and running again in no time. Because here's what I really want to point out to you. We call this affectionately the hairball here at NetSuite, or what it's probably the term in industry is application sprawl. And especially these days, right? You can, if you probably type in cloud-based applications in Google, you'll probably get, God knows, probably 10 million results in less than a minute. And the way I tend to position this with folks is I tell them, look at it this way. As I said earlier in the presentation, you kind of have QuickBooks, but then you need something for inventory, you need something for your web, you need something for customer support. It might be good in a sense because, oh, I'm solving this pain right now, but actually what you're doing is you're almost postponing, or you're doubling the pain that you're going to experience in a very short order. And it's kind of like a mathematical equation, meaning a variable equation. And so if I have 2 variables, kind of solvable, not too difficult, but when you add a 3rd variable, it's exponentially more difficult to solve, 4th, 5th. This is what's happening. You don't realize it until all of a sudden I'm at 5 or 6, and oh my God, I've got a problem, because you go back to the scenario where I said before, you come into the team meeting or whatever, everybody has their own data, and they're saying mine's right, you're wrong, and you're not really getting to me what I would say is the meat of the matter and the decision making you need to make as a team, connected and collaborating, and on that proverbial, if you will, same sheet of paper for an organization. So be very careful about this as you start to embark on determining what you're going to do from a technology standpoint. Or I think honestly these days, I think we should have a different word for it, but technology is almost like you need it to run your business. And the question is, what are the right things you're going to choose to run your business the correct way and in the most efficient way to not hinder growth and to make sure you're operating as smoothly as possible in terms of your supply chain. Because here's a wonderful cartoon. This one spoke to me many years ago. We have Einstein standing at the board, and he's trying to prove his theory of relativity, but what he really discovers is that time is money. And frankly, from a true resource standpoint, time is a very precious resource, and how you spend that time is extremely important. If you're going to spend that time plugging holes and running around and trying to connect data, that is not how you want to be spending this precious resource. So be aware, everything you do comes back to time, and time not just meaning work, but I'm getting my job done very effectively and efficiently, and I have more time to spend with my family, not with the laptop on my lap in the room while my kid is building blocks, right? And I want to talk about it's not, I don't know if it's a new concept, maybe you haven't heard of it, but it's this concept called continuous accounting. You may have heard of it. It's called continuous close. Really what it is, it's talking about the end of what's called record to report, which, the whole close process. And really where that is born from, it's born from the assembly line. That's what it goes back to. You have this period of production, then you have the end of the month, then you do your reporting. The idea behind continuous accounting, and really the whole concept when I was talking about NetSuite being 24/7, 365, is that transactions are happening in real time. And to some degree, you don't even have to touch those transactions. You can set the system up in certain ways. So when we talk about a modern general ledger, there's no more of this batch processing. It's real time. It's data rich. Think about, we were talking about multi-entity across countries, being able to have a continuous global consolidation, and also not just in terms of multi-currency or multi-company, but think about intercompany. And I don't know about some of you, but that was a job I had and I hated it, where the month would come and I had to reconcile all intercompany transactions. Imagine being able, when the intercompany transaction occurs, it settles in real time. So when you get to the end of the month, I don't have any transactions to reconcile. They've all reconciled in real time. Think about the globalization factor, having internationalization or the localization I talked about, where you're being compliant in a particular jurisdiction, whether it's tax-based or statutory requirements. In Brazil, you have to report sales to the government. So there's all different ramifications around the world. Being able to have a system that has a component that's going to make you compliant right off the bat. And then ultimately, as we've been talking about here, all of this stuff almost doesn't matter unless you can do something with it. So having information that's personalized, contextualized, I'm an accountant, I'm a salesperson, and it's automated. But more importantly, as you're looking at this information, it's very actionable. You're not looking at it and you're not paralyzed because I have no idea what this means. You intuitively understand it because it's adhered to you and what you do, and it's going to allow you to make the right decisions just by literally logging in and reacting to the information you see in front of you. And a little bit just to say, I know I'm talking a lot about finances and all, but whether you're a product company, a manufacturer, we have a whole host of capabilities when it comes to inventory management, whether that's warehouse management, whether it's MRP, whether it's demand planning, supply chain planning, whatever it is that you may need to do to run your business, product, services, project, we provide that capability to any of those business situations, which I would say, I think that's all of them, but who knows, maybe there's a new diagram, a hybrid out there, but I'm not aware of it. And here's just one last thing, or before I get to the end, I want to talk about, and that is, I talked about revenue recognition, but I also said earlier, we have a thing called, billing, annuity billing, and believe it or not, we call it suite billing. There you go. We put suite in front of billing, and now it's suite billing. But think about this. This is, in large regard, billing is almost how you interact with your customers, like it or not. And I think, personally speaking, the last thing I want to deal with is somebody who's going to get my billing wrong, is going to charge me the wrong way. I'm not going to understand or intuitive about the bill. So being able to have all this connected, whether you're a product company or service company, or you do as a service in the case of, subscription. So whatever the event is, fulfillment, milestone, or usage, being able to generate an invoice. But then more importantly, what about, I talked to you about being able to recognize revenue as easy as depreciating as a fixed asset. Same thing is true from a billing standpoint, being able to recognize that revenue consistent with whatever your situation is within your business. So So with that, I know I've answered a couple of questions, but Sahar, are there any additional questions I can ask? I can answer for you.
Tom, first of all, thank you so much. And you have been already answering a lot of our questions. There is actually a question around RevRec. So if I ask you to go back one slide, because this slide beautifully explained it. Let's say if I have a scenario of a client who actually is doing the three things. They are selling products and they have service because they have a consulting team that will install those products. And they're now slowly transitioning to a SaaS-based model. So from a RevRec perspective, how would NetSuite deal with maybe a complex situation like that they're kind of almost having the three at the same time?
So let's just assume, I won't get into the suite billing, but you're billing them accordingly, right? You billing them in terms of I'm selling you a product. So it's, FOB shipping point or whatever. Services, when I've actually delivered them or I'm doing percentage of completion, or as a service, right? Based on usage or consumption. The way that the RevRec system is going to work is, think about this as each one of these needs to have a recipe, right? So if I have a product and whatever, and with RevRec, you got to go to the customer contract, whatever the stuff is in here. And I'm going to digress for a second. Being a financial person in the past, it used to drive me out of my mind how many different sales contracts we've had. And it was always, I was always told a couple of things. Salespeople are different. I don't know what that means. And if we don't do it this way, we're not going to get the deal. I'm like, all right, well, whatever. So this, contracts would proliferate. Well, this isn't a way that you can talk to your friends in sales and say, hey, we can't have, all these, one-off contracts, because that basically, it's going to really make it very difficult to really handle everything that's going on. Number two, guess what? It's going to take a long time for you to get your commission. And there's a whole bunch of other reasons you can throw into it. So the point I want to make is, so you take product, we have a standard contract or maybe one of three options. But once you have what one of those three options are, you put that recipe into NetSuite. So if you went and sold, this customer and they have these three, so the product component is handled, in the number two way. That number two way has certain, requirements within it, depending upon how you're going to recognize revenue. Like I said, FOB shipping point or, sign, deliver, whatever it is, whatever that trigger is, you've now mechanized that within NetSuite. So they also do project work. They deliver consulting fees. So in the same sense, however you're recognizing that, is it percentage of completion or when jobs complete, whatever the need is that you have, you can set that up in a way. So now as I'm billing this customer, and remember, this could be all one invoice. I'm billing this customer now on a service. So in the system, you've got services set up. So that particular item in the inventory master or services master is already going to have a certain, parameter. How am I going to recognize revenue in these? And then finally, subscription, if they're actually, now I'm using the SaaS-based product, I'm going to bill them based on usage. And that usage could be, sometimes you might want to bill a customer where, they get, 5,000 hours or 5,000 utilities. And then, the contract is written, well, after they use that up, then you give them another contract. So there's that, or there could just be certain, ratable consumption over time. However it is that you need to configure it, you do so. But here's the point about all this. Once you've done that, once you've configured these recipes for this customer, now they're buying the certain items through your product, services, or as a service, the system is automatically going to take that. You've already got it mechanized, so it's automatically going to recognize the revenue for you. And it will, provide that capability. You can generate the waterfall reports for your auditors. You'll be happy because you don't have to try to maintain a, God only knows if you could maintain a spreadsheet. And all while at the same time, your auditors are going to love it because there's a complete and very distinct audit trail for them to say, oh, look at that. The contract says X, NetSuite says Y, revenue says Z. Oh, that's right. It's almost like as easy as kindergarten and learning your numbers. Although, but nonetheless, that's how you can, leverage this if you're a situation or a company that's doing all three of these.
Beautiful. So the RevRec component is amazing in NetSuite. And again, Tom, as you said, and I would assume this is now reflected in everything else in NetSuite. So it will be reflected in my GL, profit and loss, balance sheet, cash flow statement. I don't need to do a lot anymore because, as you said, I just need to build the recipe properly day one, and then kind of the system will take care of itself, sales orders, everything. So that's
to your point, the reporting off of that, right? Because you're going to have a bucket on the balance sheet called deferred revenue. Well, point and click and drill down. You're going to be able to get to the nth degree by customer, by company, by whatever, by channel, depending on how you set it up. So absolutely, once it's there, you've mechanized it. But the other thing that's true you then can provide the evidence, if you will. Hey, here's how we're doing it. Here's how the system's calculating it. Check all the boxes. Auditors will love you, and you can move on to other more value-added things.
Beautiful. I have two more questions. So the first question is around budgeting. Tell us more about the kind of the basic budgeting functions that come, let's say, with basic modules of NetSuite, like financial first, and then maybe the advanced budgeting function, how as a CFO, I can actually use both.
Yeah, so I'll speak from personal experience. You can go into an organization, they're going to say, we want to do budgeting and planning. And then when you look at the organization, you understand where they're at. They're not super sophisticated. They're not ready for advanced, but they are ready for budgeting. And so let's call it planning 101 or budgeting 101. We have a starter option, through the NetSuite stairway for budgeting and planning for starter, which is going to get you up and running on the key things that you want to do from a budget, whether it's by department, headcount planning, et cetera, so that you can plan by income statement, balance sheet, et cetera, putting your budget together, get up and running very, very quickly. But the thing I should say is the engine that we're using is Oracle purchased many years ago. It was called Hyperion S-Base. So it is trust me, I don't think anybody will ever hit the bandwidths on this thing. So in cases where maybe you're starting to get certain volumes of data, or let's say, hey, we've kind of got this down. I want to do demand planning for manufacturing now. You can make that part of the process and you can build it out. So just like the stairway you saw for financials first, there's a stairway for planning and budgeting as well. And so whether it's simple, let's crawl versus walk and run, we give you the ability to do that, get up and running. And then once you get, you're in shape and you've got your muscles tuned, now I'm ready to go, let's say for the Olympics, and I'm going to do demand planning, and it's going to, generate my demand plan. You can go ahead and do that. But let's keep this in mind. You're not doing this where I've got my plan now in Excel, and now I'm going to come up with a demand plan in Excel and nothing's connected. It's all connected. So I'm literally using the same information that I may have in my more holistic budget. And now I'm getting more detailed and I'm getting more attuned to specific needs within the organization, such as, something as difficult as I would say is demand planning by SKU, by plant, by country, by whatever it might be.
Amazing. And my final question is, like, as you know, when COVID hit, a lot of clients now start looking to building their own e-commerce platform and things like that. And I know in NetSuite, you guys have an amazing platform called SweetCommerce. Just from a high level, Tom, can you just tell the audience more about SweetCommerce, just very high level capabilities and how it's kind of integrated with the whole story of NetSuite?
So again, not to be hypocritical, we also provide great connectivity to, there's a lot of other good options out there, Shopify, BigCommerce, whatever. But here's the thing I would tell you all. I'm sure a lot of you, hopefully this example will resonate with you if you've shopped on Amazon, right? You go to the website, you point and click. It's very well integrated, and you get your, you bought this, it's going to be delivered tomorrow. Think about being able to do that if you're a 20-person operation by leveraging SweetCommerce, because SweetCommerce is on the same platform as your CRM, as your finance, as your operations. So as things are happening, it's in production, the product's done, you can give that customer that type of insight if you want, from your order is in production, your order is out of production, it's being QC'd, it's on the truck now. The ability to do that with SweetCommerce is there. But I just want to be clear, don't kid yourself whether you're setting up any website for that matter. Just don't assume it's going to be magic. You do have to go through implementation and make sure it's going to work. But the way I like to position it is it's almost like allowing companies to be like Amazon, and you're not necessarily using Amazon, or probably more importantly, you're not paying Amazon the fee you have to pay them. So you can keep it all for yourself.
Tom, I just want to personally thank you so much today for your time. I personally learned a lot from you. I love the style and how you were able to actually simplify a lot of very complex kind of ideas to the audience. So I really appreciate the experience and the expertise and the way how you laid out the information. I think we answered all the questions from the audience today. So I want to thank all the audience for attending today. Some of our other audience also will be hearing the recording of the session, but definitely if there are questions that we did not answer today, please send them to me. It's seher@flawlessinbound.ca, and I'll make sure to follow up with Tom and answer them. Tom, again, thank you so much for your time, an amazing session, and wish you all the best.
Great, Sarah. Thank you.